Hello, hello. This one's a weird game to have in the background because I just randomly thought about it today. I thought, oh, why not play this in the background? But this is Alter Ego, and today I'm gonna be talking about, because this is another episode of Yaps, and I'm Fadelessword, or feel free to use Fade or Fadeless. Today we're gonna be talking about the idea of like expectations and like niceties, I guess. It's a bit hard to describe, but the topic actually came up on stream a couple days ago, and I didn't really know what I really thought about it at the time. Or I guess I kind of gave like a rough idea of kind of what I thought about it, but it wasn't like anything specific, you know? Like, the stuff I gave was like very surface level, but I didn't get to like organize my thoughts too much when going over it. So I thought, what better than to use this time to go over it, you know? So, hi. Expectations and niceties. Yes! So, the main topic or idea is essentially like this idea that it's this idea of like being nice to someone or to people for a reason, which builds the idea of like an expectation of like why you're nice to them, you know? This actually came up on the topic of like karma and like, do you believe in karma or do you just like choose to be nice for certain, like what causes you to be nice to other people? That's like the topic's rough, but it's like when I thought about it, I feel like I'm not really, whenever I choose to be nice to someone, it's not because of like, it'll get me this, or I have this expectation that like something will be given back to me, you know? I feel like going in with those expectations kind of like takes away from like your whole, going in with the expectation that you're gonna get something in return for just being like nice to someone feels so weird to me. Because you have a goal of being nice, and I feel like it devalues the nicety of something you're trying to do. Which I feel like, honestly, makes sense to me. Like, sure, you can have, like, goals of why you're being nice, but, like, I just prefer being nice for the sake of being nice to someone, you know? And not, like, this need of, like, oh, well, now because I was nice to you, I expect, like, something in return. Because, I don't know, it devalues it so much. I think the same thing goes with, like, friendships. Like, sometimes you'll put in a lot of, like, friendship, like, you'll put in a lot of, like, a way you treat friends in a certain, you treat friends a certain way, right? And, like, they don't treat you that same way back. And then that expectation that something, that expectation that you have to be treated back in a certain way or else it's not equal is so strange to me. I don't know. As a person, me personally, I like prefer to not have expectations of like return, you know? Like I like doing nice things for others or like doing things for others, right? But I never expect anyone to really return that back to me, you know? Like, I always appreciate when it is, don't get me wrong, but it's not something I feel like has to be done back, you know? Like, it can be something that can be done back, and I appreciate when like people do like something back, but I have no expectations for it. I do it just because I want to, and not because I expect something, you know? Because, I don't know, when you expect something and you don't, like, receive what you're expecting, you kind of, like... Yeah, when you don't receive what you're expecting, then you kind of... I've noticed with, like, people, at least, overall, they tend to, like, lash out. Like, oh, why didn't you do this? Because I did this. But, yeah, like, that's an example. Like, a very rough example that's non-specific. But... it is a lot of, like, when you build those expectations that you have to do something back, or you expect someone to do back, you're like always disappointed when it's not done back to you. And then you're like, well, when it's not, yeah. I don't know. It's a weird topic to talk about because it's like one of those topics that are technically deeper than just the surface level of, oh, I think it's one way or the other, right? Because a lot of people do tend to expect something back, right? It's hard to just like be one way or another and not like expect something back. Because I think by nature, you kind of expect like you'll get something back by having, like, by working hard. Let's say working hard, right? The expectation of working hard. When you work hard, you're expected to, like, you tend to expect to be rewarded for working hard, right? Because, I mean, you put in a lot of effort. You put in a lot of time. You put in, like, all this ability that, like, you know, you might have not put in otherwise. And now that you've put in all this effort, well, maybe you're not getting a reward for it. Or you're not getting the outcome you desired from all this effort. Like, I guess a personal example for me would be like, let's say I put in a lot of effort into making YouTube videos. This doesn't like actually apply to me. This is a very like rough example. Because I am, again, a person who doesn't really expect anything. So... I'm just giving this as an example, but let's say, like me, I put in a lot of effort posting YouTube videos, and I post them, like, pretty consistently and frequently, some of them being more, like, high quality than others, right? If I was a person who, like, really kept expectations, like, high like that, I would say, oh, I'd be disappointed when my videos don't perform very well. I'd be very disappointed when my videos don't perform very well, actually. But that's because I expected my hard work that I put into making all this, or that hard work I put to recording and editing and all of that, to be received in an equal amount of, like, recompense. And it doesn't work like that, you know? It never really does work like that. You can work hard, and there's always benefits to working hard, like personal growth and like those types of benefits. But success is never guaranteed through working hard. So whenever you set up that expectation that you worked hard, so now you expect like, now that I've worked hard, I'll just grow and be better or something like that, right? When you set up that expectation, it always feels strange to me. Because I get where it's coming from, of course. Like, you put in a lot of effort. Why isn't your effort being rewarded, right? And honestly, that's a very fair and knowledgeable... Not knowledgeable. That's a very fair, like, thought process to have. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you be rewarded for effort? I feel like life tends to always throw the idea that you will be rewarded for effort as long as you put it in, right? Like, over time, you always get that idea, but it's never exactly just that easy, right? Because you can put in all that effort, but it's never, like, 100% correlated, right? Sometimes you'll put in effort on, like, an exam or an assignment or something like that, and you might not receive the grade you've wanted, or you might not be close to a grade you wanted either. Sometimes you might feel like the mark's incorrect. Or maybe you put in a lot of work into a job, and even though it succeeds or something, what you get back isn't equivalent to all that effort and work you put in, you know? So you're disappointed by that expectation that, oh, I put in all this effort and work, yet I essentially received nothing for all my hard work. It's hard, right? Because by nature, you expect, like, you'll get a fair reward or a fair compensation for all that work you put in. I mean, after all, it feels so unfair when you don't, like, have that. It feels very unfair. But even then, it's like, well, you can't really do anything about it, right? Maybe that's kind of I don't know, what's the word? Fatalistic? I don't know, feudalistic? I don't know what the word is, but it's like you're just expecting like an outcome of failure, you know? But it's not always like that. I guess with my mentality, I don't really treat it as I'm always expecting failure. I'm more so just don't keep my expectations like super high about things. I don't like having my expectations like very high, especially when it comes to like other people. Because I just feel like that's unfair to them, you know? I put all these expectations, if I put all these expectations on other people just because I do something, I feel like I'm forcing some other people into like corners that I wouldn't want to force them into. I wouldn't want to force someone into these corners because, I mean, I wouldn't feel good being forced into a corner. Like, someone does something for me and then they expect the exact same thing back, you know? It's like, well, I can't control, like, everything, right? I try to definitely pay back people for their kindness and support, but I can't always do that. I can't always do that, right? And, you know, I like being able to be given the understanding without the expectation that I have to be someone who like bounces back and like has to like essentially keep giving people or like keep paying it back, you know? I don't know, it doesn't feel good being forced into that aspect. And that's why I don't like forcing like other people into that aspect either, because it's like, well, I don't want that, so I don't want that on me, so I wouldn't want that on others either. So that's why I try to like not keep expectations high. Maybe it's like I should keep them high, or maybe it's a good thing to keep them high. But like, you know, I don't want to. I know, I tend to be a very self-sufficient person, or I like to be a self-sufficient person, you know? The idea of like not having expectations of things to succeed one way or another, and then forcing myself to adapt and get better from that always has sat with me in a way that like makes me more comfortable about working hard, even with like no specific reward on the line. It's nice to have rewards on the line, but I like just being able to motivate myself without being forced into the need of like, I need X amount of rewards on a line in order to succeed in that way, you know? Because it limits me, right? And then I also get to avoid the disappointment when like something doesn't do as well as I want it to. Well, I didn't have expectations for it in the first place, so I didn't have expectations for it in the first place, right? So I'm not really like forced into being like, I have to do one thing one way or another. I don't have to like take the time off from like doing things to like think about, oh, it failed, and now that it failed, the downtime when you're sad about something failing. That's what I'm kind of aiming towards here while talking, if it wasn't clear. Because there is some downtime when you're like sad about something not succeeding the way you wanted it to, right? It disappoints you and stops you from being able to work on the thing you love working on, right? And when it stops you from doing that, it's so difficult to keep going sometimes with the stuff you want to do. Which sucks, because it's something you want to do, right? Something you enjoy doing that you're not able to do anymore, because now that you've set this expectation of something you like doing, not receiving a certain reward, it's like, well, now what? I used to play tournaments, right? And I think I used to set a lot of expectations, like, I've been practicing like every night for hours and hours on end. So I have to succeed now, right? And then I don't. Or I do like a really bad, or I have like a really bad like play, or like mess up really hard on something, right? Even though I practiced not to mess up. It's like, well, I expected all that practice to pay off, and yet here I am having felt like I just wasted my time practicing for something that I didn't succeed in. Which is tough, because again, it's all that effort. It's balancing the idea of like, you put in all that effort just to like not succeed at something. Which, yeah, sucks. It sucks. But yeah, personally, I don't try to set expectations in people, because, especially with people, right? Because when you set expectations on people, what I've noticed is like, I don't know, not everyone does this, but I feel like a lot of people I've seen who like set a lot of expectations on other people kind of tend to lash out at them for not like meeting that expectation, which is really rough, because I mean, everyone has their own circumstances and their own needs and everything, and it's like, if you can't acknowledge the fact that everyone has that, and you're instead forcing your one-way agenda of like, you have to do this because this is what I want, right? It feels bad. You know? But, I mean, it's also just people, right? I mean, with the expectation there, the flip side is maybe you put in a lot of effort into befriending someone or making friends with someone or something, and you're like putting all this effort and you just don't feel it coming back to you, right? Well then, is it better not to expect anything? Because if you didn't expect anything, then you can just keep pushing yourself to be a friend to someone who isn't paying that back the same way as you maybe want them to? Or is it better to be like, to confront that feeling that you're having and be like, okay, well, you know, I had this expectation and, you know, I don't feel it reciprocated ever or equally. So maybe I shouldn't be in this relationship or friendship, right? That's always tough with that, right? Because it's never just one way or the other, as I mentioned. There's so many nuances and things you have to consider when like dealing with that. It's never just one way or the other. If it was, it'd definitely be easier, but I don't think it ever works like that, right? So really, my method of not having expectations, well, it like, you know, doesn't exactly, how do you put it? My method of like not having very many expectations doesn't exactly make it so I can't feel, God, I don't know how to put it. Again, this is such a topic where it's like, I want to put it the right way rather than putting it a way that I don't actually mean, because it's a very big topic that I think is meaningful and impactful to me personally. But yeah, I just don't set my expectations like high, you know, or set my expectations sometimes at all. Because again, it's like, I don't want to force people to bend to my will of like what I want versus like maybe they just have their own circumstances where they can't reach that right now, you know? But it's tough again, because then maybe I push myself too hard when trying to do things for other people, but then I don't get that reciprocated to me, right? Ever. And then it's like, well, am I pushing myself too hard for nothing? It's like, well, as I mentioned, I enjoy doing that, you know? It's something I enjoy doing. But since I enjoy doing it, does that make it more selfish? Even if it's a good deed for someone else, does that still make it selfish because I enjoy it? It's tough, right? It's not like... It's like, well, now that I don't have expectations and it's something I enjoy doing because it's something I enjoy, right? Does that mean I'm being selfish by enjoying it and not having any expectations of return? No, right? Probably not, because, again, return feels more selfish. But that's just my perspective on it as well. My perspective isn't the only way to look at things, right? In some way, maybe I could be being selfish by not having any expectations. Maybe it like signifies a lack of belief in other people, right? And then if I have a lack of belief in other people, does that mean I'm being selfish by not believing in other people? Right? It's tough. It's a very open topic. that like lets you kind of nuance yourself in different ways. That's not just one way or the other, because it's not just one way or the other. There's so many different ways to look at it. There's so many different things and concepts to consider about the whole like idea. It's cool, but I don't know. It's always difficult when you have to piece together like how much expectation is too much expectation and how little is too little. It's about finding a balance is what I think I found. Because I've done both extreme opposites, right? And I guess I'm technically more closer to one side than the other of having no expectation. But I've done both ways. I used to have a lot of expectations, and then I'd get disappointed when the expectations didn't pan out the way I wanted. And then I started having no expectations, but then I pushed myself too hard for people who didn't like want that like friendship or that like lack of expectation from me, or like wanted me to wanted me to like be someone like I couldn't, but I still pushed myself into that role, right? Because they expected that of me. But I didn't manage my own expectations of a equivalent friendship. Or maybe the way to look at it, honestly, is expectations for yourself. Now, expectations for yourself is a whole different category. But I guess it's a good way to manage like yourself, right? Because what the issue arises from expectation of others is a lot of the issues you get from that is well, as I mentioned, pushing yourself too hard, right? Or like lashing out when someone doesn't reach that expectation. When you put expectations on yourself, it's a little more tricky because now you're dealing with like, well, now what do you feel? How do you feel? How does certain things make you feel? How do you expect yourself to be treated? I think technically expectations on yourself would be more healthy, because that way it's like instead of having expectations of how you expect someone else to be like, you can expect like how you expect yourself to be treated and what you think is the best way, the best expectation of your own treatment. And then you have like that idea in mind that you need to be treated this way. Okay. So you have an expectation for yourself to be treated a certain way. It also like lets you set goals and boundaries for yourself. Like, I want to go, I expect that I can be able to do this. But again, when you put like those goals and boundaries through expectations, you kind of get into the issue of, I expected this for myself and I didn't reach that expectation of myself. What does that say about me? And like, realistically, it doesn't really say anything about you. It just says, well, you tried and you failed, but you can try again. You can give it another shot. You can see how well it goes the next time. Failure is not the end, but what comes with expectations on yourself is a lot of that idea that failure is the end, that you failed to reach this expectation you set on yourself, and now because of that you'll never succeed in a way that you feel comfortable with, maybe. Or maybe you'll never reach that expectation is what you think, right? Maybe you succeeded, but not in the way you expected to succeed, and even then, even though you succeeded at something, you weren't happy with the result. It's tricky, right? Because while I find expectations on yourself more healthy, once again, you reach another borderline where how much is too much? Is it good to put too much expectation on yourself? Probably not. I mean, definitely not, right? But then, as a person who tends to like doing things on their own or is self-reliant, I feel like I'm normally more like, well, now that I expect all this of myself, I can push myself into these goals that I want to reach. But yeah, I mean, something you learn over time is like, well, I mentioned that failure can be crushing when you have expectations on yourself. When you learn to like manage your expectations a little better for yourself and for others, you learn that like failure is not the end. Well, it feels like really crushing a failure or a loss or a defeat or something. It never is like the end. Just because you fail something doesn't really mean it's like over. You can always go back and succeed. You can always do it again and succeed, maybe. Excuse me. But yeah, it's always about like, you can go back and succeed. Like, that's what you learn. Like, you learn over time that failure is like never really the end. There's more after failure. There comes a lot more after failure. If anything, if you think about it, well, a start might be the start. A failure is that beginning that you get afterwards. That restart. Failure is the restart after a fail. Yeah, failure is a restart. Because now, it's New Game Plus, actually, specifically. But it's a restart, but gained with, like, new knowledge. So now that you've gained all this information, you can go back in, reset your expectations, adjust, like, your goals for yourself, and then work off there. That's why failure is not the end, but, you know, when you don't experience failure often, the first few times you experience it can be so soul-crushing. Especially when you have expectations on yourself. Or maybe you have expectations for something else, something you've made, another person, and that fails. Again, that can be crushing. That can be really crushing, actually. But once you learn, like, it's okay to fail, not everything will succeed in one try, then you learn to like, oh, okay, well, I can do better next time. And you can adjust your expectations to something more fitting. And just like that, you can keep going. Keep working forward. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I have talked in circles pretty often in this video. This game was more distracting than I thought it'd be. For a clicking game, essentially. So that's kind of my bad. I didn't expect this to be so distracting. It does kind of fit the vibe though, huh? But yeah, I mean, personally speaking, my expectations I don't keep very high on other people because I feel like everyone has their own circumstances. So I never really want to like force anyone into having to reach an expectation I've wildly set on them myself. Right? It feels stupid to me. But I do set expectations for myself because, you know, it helps me work on things. Helps me manage things, helps me kind of work on succeeding at things and giving stuff a try that I probably wouldn't have in the past. Yeah, that's kind of my look on expectations and everything. So, you know, if you disagree, feel free to comment your own perspective on it in the comments. If you have your own topic suggestion, feel free to also put that in the comments as well. Sorry there aren't any uploads aside from Fade Yaps for the month. Honestly, I've been streaming every day this month for an event, so it's a little... I don't have time to edit videos specifically, as much as I wish I could. But I do appreciate all the people who stick around, watch the streams, and vibe out with me. And listen to these. They're always, like, never really well, like, nuanced or anything, or, like, they're just my opinion, right? They're nothing I've, like, talked about that, like, exceeds my opinion, you know? But I still appreciate all the time you've given me, even just listening to my opinion. It's, like, I really appreciate it. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, that's me. I have talked probably long enough. This is probably a longer Fade Yaps than I've had in a little while, but yeah, I mean, thank you for watching. I appreciate you dropping in. Again, feel free to let me know your own perspective on expectations and such. But yeah, thank you for watching. And I will let you go now. But yeah, take care of yourselves. I'll see you later. Hopefully next week's episode of Fade Yaps as well. And yeah, catch you guys later. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Take care, take care, take care.